those of you who are joining us vis-a-vis social media. I know many are rejoicing with the CDC, but I still say the virus is still with us, and still have to be cautious. I personally, I speak for me, I got the vaccine, and I also still wear a mask, and I also wash my hands because this is still an unknown disease. We're, as Indiana Jones said, we're making it up as we go because we're finding out more and more. So be cautious, and I urge you, I speak as a pastor, loves everybody. The vaccine relatively safe and proven. There are some glitches. And if you got questions, don't get it from the barbershop conversation, beauty part. Ask them. Call a doctor, call a medical professional or your state health department and ask questions. But here's the thing, while young people may not come down with it, they can transfer it to older people who are not vaccinated. And that's would be a tragedy. So we look like we're at the end of the tunnel, but I advise you to go and get the shot. Black doctors are saying it's all right. And may I say the vaccine was developed, one was developed by a black scientist, I think here, and one overseas. So, and the doctors in the medical profession that are people of color are saying it's okay to get it. I saw one preacher was trying to blow the virus away on TV. That ain't gonna work because God works through medical science, or he can't work instantly. But more than not, he chooses medical science because even that name, Jehovah Rohi, the Lord who heals, really means the Lord who mends or who weaves. And so medicine takes time, and God raises the medical profession up to facilitate the fight with disease. Some people argue, well, Reverend, the game was so fast. Well, I understand science builds on previous discoveries, and they've had enough studies on viruses, which is what this is, on how they work. They were able to figure out the best way to invent a vaccine, and even, I'm told, it doesn't have eggs in it, so if you're allergic to eggs, you still can get it. So take that in the spirit that it is given. Now, if you have your Bibles, I want to uplift the second chapter of the book of Exodus. Verses 8 and 9. It says, and Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the maiden went and called the child's mother. Now in this case, the maiden is Miriam, and the child's mother is Jochebed, or some quarters Jochebed. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him, and the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, saying, because I drew him out of the water. I want to use for subject 3 women and a baby. And that might ring a little familiarity, because there was a movie called 3 Men and a Baby. I want us to look at 3 women and a baby. You must remember that today's present is tomorrow's history. We don't think that, but for better or worse, we are living in history that will be talked about in the future. We should therefore take seriously the way we care for our children. Someone has said that more often than not, when God moves, he moves through the maternity ward. We know that someone has done a study of the year 1809, and so many people, famous people, were born that year, even though Napoleon reigned in Europe. But quietly, God sent forth a persons who would affect the destiny of our nation in one way or another. 1809, Abraham Lincoln was born on a Sunday morning, February 12th, who saved our union and helped to get rid of the curse of slavery. I believe the poet, my recollection serves me correct, poet Edgar Allan Poe, I think, was born in 1809. So often God moves vis-a-vis the maternity ward. Even when he decided to become a man, he didn't come down here full grown, but he was deceived by the Holy Spirit. It was already God, because the book says God gave him a body, went through the gestation period of 9 months, and Paul says that Christ, when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born under the law. Now that simply means, when the fullness of time means, is a picture word of how they mark time using what was called a clepsydra or a water clock. The bowl had markings, and there was a slow drip some way. And as that bowl got full, that's how they marked time. So Paul uses that image to talk about the fullness of time. Or you could say, when God's time, when heaven's clock, so to speak, struck the right hour, Jesus came into the world to save humanity. Now, in this particular case, here again, God works vis-a-vis, quote, the maternity ward. Text says that Pharaoh, and that there was a crisis in Egypt, so to speak, that as that generation of Joseph and his brothers passed off the scene, there was a Pharaoh who arose that knew not Joseph. And of course, we know from history there was some upheaval at this time in Egypt where a new dynasty comes to power. And this man didn't have a clue as to why the Hebrews were in Egypt in the first place. And so what he does is what most demagogues and dictators do, is to play on the ignorance and fear of people. You see that today. He says, and we need to deal with these Hebrews, lest we be invaded and they take sides against our enemy. And he didn't have a hint. There was no hint, but that decision was justified if they were going to turn on Egypt and side with their enemies. So Pharaoh's plan A was to work them to death. We're going to make slaves out of them, work them to death. But that didn't work, because the more they did, the more they multiplied. Remember, they started out under Joseph, 70 people, and ended up developing into a nation to start out of millions. So the next thing, when they couldn't kill them all by work, they decreed that the male children be killed. And so, but God always moves silently. He doesn't make a lot of noise when he moves. It's kind of like a parent he's in the house, even though you don't hear him. They're there. So he sends forth, as it were, child born of Amram and Jochebed. They had, of course, two children, Miriam and Aaron, of the tribe of Levi, the priestly tribe. And they have a son, Moses. The record says the child was beautiful to behold. And while Pharaoh said they should be put to death, either sword or thrown into the Nile to drown, she hid this child for 3 months. How she did that, you don't know, because the child doesn't know night from day. He's going to wake up in the middle of the night crying. He's going to cry when diaper needs change, when he's hungry. He doesn't care what time it is. You move by his time, so to speak. So rather than surrender her child, she builds a boat, or what's called an ark, places this child in the ark, little makeshift crib, you could say, floating crib, and puts on the Nile. And Miriam, of course, stands afar to see what would happen. Now, she discovers this basket that has the bulrushes, that has little baby Moses in it. Her heart is touched, and she decides to adopt him, to raise him as her own. Now, in the scheme of things, notice that when Miriam sees what happened, Miriam does not, she's a smart little girl, does not give her identity. But she said, do you need a nursemaid to take care of that baby? Pharaoh's daughter says, yes. So she goes to get Moses' actual mother to breastfeed, if you will, to nurture this child in its infancy. Until he grew, and then she comes and gets him, and he lives in the king's palace for 40 years until he realizes who he is and slays an Egyptian, and Pharaoh gets wind of it and he has to leave town because he was on the Egyptian post office, most wanted, by the Egyptian FBI. And he flees into Midian for 40 years, raising sheep. Then God calls him forth from a burning bush. At 80 years old, he leads the first freedom movement. Now, what can we learn? Because we notice in this text, there are 3 women and this child. There is his mother, Jochebed, his sister Miriam, and Pharaoh's daughter. Now, what does this text say to us? First thing it says, Moses, like all children today, are born in some ways a terrible time in a hostile environment. Now, this world, compared to when we grew up, is worse. Now, I was worse in terms, of course, we didn't have all the modern conveniences, you might say. We didn't have computers and cell phones. As I was saying to somebody a while, that all the stuff I saw on the Jetsons TV show, cell phone, screen TV, a newspaper on the screen, all that, all thing we don't have in mass production yet. There is one, is a flying car. And I shudder to think what that's going to be like, because folk can't have drive on the ground. You talk about a mess. We don't have that. But what we did have back then was love for one another. Character and integrity meant something. Telling the truth meant something.
Oh, yeah.
Children were put in line. Remember, you were sent out the room. I was. when grown folk want to discuss topics that you were too young to handle. But yet, our culture is hostile toward children. Why you say that? Well, we sacrifice our children. And even there were ancient gods in biblical times that demanded child sacrifice. God Moloch demanded child sacrifice. And we sacrifice our children in this country. For example, the abortion industry. You get pregnant, you don't want that baby to sacrifice for, quote, your convenience. You have it put to death in your womb. And most women that do that have lived to regret it. But then, when you look at government policy, how we sacrifice children, every week, just about, you hear of senseless shootings of young folk as well as old folk. And we are sacrificing our children on the altar of the NRA. Just to appease them when the public demands sensible gun control. We ain't saying get rid of guns. We're saying sensible gun control. Like even this thing. The governor said he's going to veto is to do away with concealed permits. And the police themselves don't want that. But we have people with idolized guns. Just as they drunk idolized liquor and a dope addict idolized drugs. You don't kill them with too much of a bad thing. You have to get under control. Nobody said we're going to take your guns. And besides, AR, whatever it is, 15, that's to kill people, not deers and squirrels. Come on. My Second Amendment rights. But yeah. But what will destroy this country, what I call excesses, that's what gets you in trouble. Too much of a good thing. We sacrifice our children to preserve the gun law. And we also sacrifice our children of color in policy. Government can find money for more defense spending. And you hear folk griping about federal spending. Well, why you say that when you gave the rich that big tax cut and the rest of us $1,400? They got upset. For $1,400 ain't no money. Come on now. Most of y'all trying to spend that money. People sacrifice our children. And even in the name of white supremacy, because we cannot deal with what I call systemic racism. Cannot deal with police brutality. To preserve the order, we sacrifice innocent children and grown folk who happen to be colored on the altar of white supremacy. That's what it is. Now, there's a debate about this critical race theory, and you can't fight something you don't know what you're fighting. It doesn't mean putting blacks over white. It simply means looking at the system of how it's put together, how it has entrenched certain things that should be dismantled to make America what she says she is. We ain't preaching black supremacy. We're just saying, look at the law since you were founded, you put in place. Come on, church. To justify what you've done, and you got the benefits. And I always say this, even though you may not have taken up a lash or held a rope to lift somebody, going back to the parable of the Good Samaritan, the Levite and the priest did what Isaac Hayes said, walk on by. You still need to get involved to remedy the situation. Amen. Good Samaritan was on his way somewhere else, according to the Greek. But he stops and gets involved. So, Moses was born in a hostile environment. And you could say he's born in the hood. And of course, all of us, you don't live in the hood, you came through it. And yet we see we killing one another. Senseless. For no reason. You stepped on my shoes. Or revenge killing. And when you do that, two families are ruined. One's dead, and you going to jail. Odds are. So 2 lives are ruined. So Moses was born in a hostile environment. Moses was sort of like a lily put in a cesspool that's put there eventually to give fragrance of freedom and deliverance to that culture.
Oh, yeah.
But the second thing, look at these women. Jochebed, his mother, represents promise and hope. The text says that he was a beautiful child in his mother's eyes. See? I don't think it has to do with how he looked physically, though probably. She may want to know which side of the family he resembled. But every mother is going to see her child as beautiful. Come on. You might not, but that mama does. Come on. And why should you judge what's ugly and what's pretty anyway? Come on. She said it was a beautiful child, which represents promise and hope. Now, the one thing what the Jews do, they don't call, yes, they call their children by name, Isaac and Rebekah, and so forth. Sometimes, they don't have Jewish biblical names. But what they sometimes will do, they look at that child's potential. See my lawyer, see my little doctor, see my little school teacher. We have to look at our children, not as future statistics, but as future saints that God can use to make the world into a better place. Yeah. Now, my parents, that generation, came up through Jim Crow. But they thought it because they looked at their children and wanted us to have a better opportunity. You see, my father said, young people are the seed corn of the race. Of course, somebody else has said that. But you have to look at our children. Don't give up on them. They might get on your last nerve. And I've heard kids tell me when she got on my nerves, I said, boy, you too young to have nerves. You ain't live long to have no nerves. Yeah. No about nerves. You ain't paying no taxes. You got to deal with all kind of issues every day. She saw the potential of that child, which meant she put time in nurturing that child. Listen, I often say, when we dedicate a baby on Christmas, you ought to show them a flower and a weed. But it's up to the parents to decide what that child is going to be. If you want it to be a flower, you got to nurture it. Come on. Get it right. Y'all don't hear me. Yes. Counsel it. Or if you want it to be a weed, don't do nothing. Learn the wrong four-letter words. Don't teach them four-letter words like work and cook and iron. Come on. Don't demand that he respect and does. Let him come in time of night. Let him not do his homework. And forsake putting that strap on you. I'm old school, that strap with that board on you. Because if you deal with a child when he's small, when he gets a certain age, you have a lot of problems.
Oh, yes.
But see, now, we got this thing, you want to be cute. No, the statistics, especially for our black males, ain't cute. And I can tell our young brothers, turn your music down in your car. because that draws the police.
Oh, yeah.
And play your music. If you want to listen to all that stuff, play it for yourself. I don't want to hear that boom, boom. They don't know what they're saying. And they really don't want to know what they're saying.
Oh, yeah.
You can rap, but you can't read. Pull your pants up.
Yeah.
Remember, God measures your personhood not from the waist down, from the waist up. Late Senator Russell Long once said, don't outshout folk. You cannot think. Sometimes you keep your mouth shut, you can get out of a situation.
Oh, yes.
Some things they don't ask, you don't tell.
Yeah.
Just talk your way out of that. Don't cuss out the police. You say, anything wrong, officer? Yep. Chocolate bread salt, hope, and promise in that chocolate. And that's why we need to go to the polls, because we're not just voting for ourselves, we're voting for this young man on the front. That he will have a better future.
Yes.
You ought to live. Don't spend all of it, leave something behind for your children. Don't sell your land, they ain't making no. They can have a better world. A sense of ownership. I know people say, well, I ain't gonna leave Chicago. You don't know where you're gonna end up. Number one. And number two, you can live in one place and own something else in another place. You look at Senator Romney, 5 houses all over the world. Look at Donald Trump. God bless him. Bless his heart. Got property everywhere. Well, you just pay the taxes. You get a manager. But don't be so fast to sell your assets like the property. Because God ain't making no more land. And so you really, riches don't come through so much cash. It comes through assets that go up in value. And so you got to see down yonder in the future. That's why the other folk playing some of this best. Ain't no accident. Most of us, a lot of us in jail, or suppress the vote. We got to think ahead. In long term, think generationally. Not just monthly a year. And move on. Miriam's picture's protection. Our males need protection against destructive forces that desire to hurt them. I know some of you sisters here and elsewhere, hey, time like the males. Well, first of all, if you study history, any people that wanted to keep a people oppressed attack the males. Why? The males bear the seed to reproduce. The males, by and large, the leaders in the community, heads of households. If they're in jail or strung out or what have you, they can't get education. They can't provide for a family. Now, I know some of you sisters have had a hard time with a brother, but let me say this to you. There's still some good men out there. Don't dog us. Don't cuss us out. Embrace us. Pray for us. And you don't have to tear down my masculinity to accent your femininity. Did y'all get that? I'll say it again. You don't have to tear down my masculine as a man to embrace your femininity. And remember, in slavery, civil rights, brothers got their head back in too. Brothers got murdered. Man, not to collect the contribution, but but I cringe every time I hear sister, hey, and a black female, I got a problem with that. But don't justify, just ignore the situation. See? Miriam protected her baby brother, watched over him. So it simply means that you can't leave out the brothers. And I always tell women this, let me give you a hint, sister, y'all's looking for a husband. And I might be mad, I'm going to say this. Man wants respect first before he wants sex. No, that brother wants respect. And I don't mean be a carpet. Say what you gonna say and hush. Don't do Sister Gary, what you ain't. No, say what you gonna say and be quiet. Take a hint from Abigail. She prevented the slaughter of her husband and his household because she spoke and made overtures of death and saved lives. But some of y'all run me off because you talk too much. Come on. And you ought to warn a man not for what he got, because that may change but who he is. That's why you got millionaires can't stay together. You get married for the wrong reason. Oh, what he got, child, yeah. But you might live in hell too. Versus working together to build a home and a life. Bible says, I'm paraphrasing, it's better to be satisfied with a hamburger in peace than to be in confusion at a banquet. And that's what we got going on in this country. Oh, we're the richest country. But we great. But we just acting all kind of craziness. And move on. And then Pharaoh's daughter speaks of participation on a communal level. But she also reminds us that the oppressed have never risen without sympathetic help from the members of the dominant or oppressive culture. What I'm saying is, Pharaoh's daughter was part, not that she did, but her father decreed the slaughter of Israelite daughters. So let's remember that culture. Now, when you look at our history, there were whites that led the abolitionist movement, Underground Railroad, like the Quakers. Now, if you watch that movie, 12 Years a Slave, where his brother was kidnapped, and it's true story, sent, I think, in the Alexandria area, down there, and a Quaker was building something. He found out what happened. So what he does, come on now. God will be the quiet job, though. Writes a letter, and this man has a hissy fit. That's my property, not my person. And the man gets his freedom back. In the Selma Montgomery March, Baluzo gave her life, and her daughters are friends of mine in Detroit. Goodman and Cheney and Swanner, two of them were white, murdered her for pushing the right to vote. And if you look at the March on Washington, just wasn't blacks. It's a mixed crowd, because Dr. King said they knew their destiny is tied with ours. And so, we have allies. Sometimes quiet. I remember my father was trying to register to vote. The story goes in Lincoln Parish, 1948. You had to take a 10-page test, essentially. You had to answer, you had to figure your birthday down to the day. Then they asked some questions that were irrelevant to you being a citizen. One, I haven't had a child of wedlock, I ain't for a child of wedlock, I'm not shacking. What's that got to do with your rights as a citizen? Then you had to recite the preamble of the Constitution of the United States to the satisfactory of the registrar. Now that's crazy, because you may not pronounce a word like he did. Because sometimes you get the vowel sounds and the blend sounds. You don't say it like it is. I mean, some folks don't say that, they said that. I mean, that, they said that. You mispronounce with that. But that's part of my culture. Who that? Am I beating something, beating ground, beating saints? It's part of my culture. So, and the other thing you had to put the ward in the precinct. Now here's the that I put on. There's a white man in Ruston who was sympathetic behind the scenes. And told my father, he says, what you do? He said, don't put your address on the envelope, the home address. Get you a post office box and write Baton Rouge and ask them to tell you what the ward and precinct is. And it came to the post office box. That's how they got the information to pass the test. So it was all, and you look at the 7 Montgomery Mars. That's a mixed multitude. If you look at the program they had there, white entertainers, black entertainers, you know, at the malls. Charlton Heston, of course, he changed. Went to the right. He had James Garner, Marlon Brando. They were there. So God often raises up allies on the other side to get the job done. You can look at Lincoln, the Kennedys, they were had to persuade him. But he always raises up supporters to intervene to set his people free. Move on. And then, as I close, the text says, Pharaoh's daughter filled out his birth certificate and named him Moses, or as Hebrew Moshe, or in Africa as one of my tribes, in the Mandinka tribe, which my DNA goes back to, and in St. John Parish, as a monument to a slave who kept his identity called Musa, which is Arabic for Moses. And she named him Moses because she said, I drew him out of the water. That is a picture of all of us. Your name may be Jack or Jim, Sam, but when you look at your life, can't you say, God, come on, church, drew you out, pulled you out, rescued you, even when you didn't know it. You might have been acting a fool. And you ain't got to fess up by a whole lot of brothers. Were crazy. And almost got shot. Being where they never should have been.
Oh, yes.
In the first place.
Yes.
But the God we serve, like a loving Father, draws us out and will draw us up.
Oh, yeah.
My brothers, I remember hearing the story of a preacher who went to the bus station and he got there too late. And the bus driver wouldn't open the door to let him on the bus. Now, he wasn't a preacher then. He was a student. So he cussed the bus driver and the bus out. But what he did not know was down the road, that bus had a terrible accident. And some folk got killed. And he went from cussing to praising. I don't know what situation you're in, but you need to be drawn out.
Oh, yes.
Well, as I close, Pharaoh's daughter was royalty. And she also, beloved, you could say, pictures the church, because we ought to be drawing people out of the situation they're in.
Oh, yeah.
But there is another one whose royalty is not bestowed by bloodline per se, but it is bestowed by who he is, and his name is Jesus, because he came up through 42 generations. He was royalty, but Paul says he emptied himself and became a servant, and even endured the death on the cross for our redemption. Beloved, he draws us out, and I'm so glad, beloved, that we are born in a rough environment, but the Lord still will raise up people known and unknown that will help you out if you stay on the main line and talk to Jesus and just ask him to let me walk with you. And beloved, the Lord has vision. He can see way down the road, and he sees what's around the bend. And so, beloved, the hymn writer says that I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, but the Master heard my despairing cry, and from the waters lifted me. How many of y'all know that he's able to lift you out of the flood tide that seeks to destroy you? He's able to lift you from the floods of alcoholism and drug addiction. He's able to lift you up from the floods of sexual promiscuity and perversion. He's able, I tell you, to lift you up from the sea, from the waters of racism and white supremacy. He's able to raise you up, and he will put you up, wash you off, plant your feet on solid ground. Won't he do it, church? Beloved, he's able to draw us out, but someday he's going to draw us up to that land on high. Somebody said the land of never will never be sick, will never be hungry, will never die, but it is a forever land. You know, a fairy tale ends and they live happily ever after. We gonna live happily ever after. We gonna praise his holy name and say, worthy, worthy is the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Oh, my brothers and sisters, you know how he drew us out. He drew us out with credit cards and stacks and bonds, but on a hill called Calvary, they stretched him high and they hung him wide. He died until the earth reeled and rocked like a drunken man. Died until the saints sat up in that grave. But early on Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hands. Don't let the world keep you from helping somebody.
Oh, yes.
Because in the scheme of things, you might be setting somebody up for a takeoff on the runway.
Oh, yes.
It's been said, well, not been said, it's true. A plane can do everything but can't go in reverse. And a man has to get in that little vehicle and push the plane out from the gate to help him get on the runway. All of the great people that had an impact on the famous who made a difference, we don't know their names. We don't know who, I don't know who Michael Jordan's coach was, but he's synonymous with basketball. I don't know who coached LeBron James, but he's a basketball player. I don't know who Dr. King's teachers were, other than Ms. Ramirez, but in his grade school. We don't know. So it could be you're launching, helping, God is using you to launch somebody to the runway make a difference. This young man right here on the front. We had to push him on the runway. We don't know who we have here. Doctor, lawyer, maybe governor, maybe president. We don't know who taught Barack Obama in grade school or Michelle. But God used them to get them on the runway
Oh, yes.
to make a difference in this world. So all of these secondary characters in this story, the primary character is Moses. But God used those three women to nurture that baby into a man to deliver his people. God bless you. God keep the doors of the church open. Blessed assurance,
Jesus is mine.
Taste of glory divine, elevation, purchase of God, His Spirit.